Hi, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Plymouth. I'm your host, Derek Brindisi, Town Manager. This afternoon, we have a special guest. Sheila Sgarzi is the Acting Department of Public Works Director. And thank you, Sheila, for coming on to this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Sheila, just I think you've been working for the town for about 18 years now. And given everything that's going on with the Department of Public Works, I thought this would be an optimal time to talk about all the different projects. And we'll get into those projects in a minute, because I think the other day you had mentioned that we have almost $25 million in projects that are happening over the course of the springtime period. So we have a lot to talk about, and we'll probably just kind of touch on the surface of a lot of these projects, but just so folks have a kind of sense of everything that you guys are doing over at DPW. But before we get into the projects, I know you've been working for the town for 18 years now, and some people know you, but a lot of people may not know you. So can you give us all a little bit of a background of who you are, what you've been doing for the town, maybe some personal background?
I grew up in Kingston, family connections to the Plymouth area, so Plymouth is near and dear to my heart. I'm an engineer by trade. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in civil engineering. I was the water and wastewater engineer for about 15 years. Really enjoyed that position with the town. Water is my passion, infrastructure in particular. Then I moved on to town engineer in 2020 and moved up to assistant DPW director, and I'm the acting DPW director right now. So it's a very satisfying job. Very busy, intense, but I love it.
So let me ask you then, you served as a town engineer for about 2 years, it sounds like, and then jumped immediately into the assistant DPW director role, and now you're the acting DPW director.
Yep.
What do you think? What are your thoughts on filling that role?
Yeah,
are you enjoying it?
I am, strangely enough. There's a lot going on in the town of Plymouth. Plymouth is a very big community, over 100 square miles, 61,000 people. There's never a dull day in Plymouth. What I like about the job is I take my engineering background, so I have the background in design, process, thinking about solutions, and I see us implementing. So I like that, tying my engineering background into the day-to-day operations.
Good. And I'm sure, so let me ask you this question. When you were the town engineer, did you have your hands in all the 9 different divisions, or, because as the DPW director, I mean, you have to pay attention to all 9 divisions. So is that a similar role, being the town engineer?
Engineering touches every facet of DPW. So aside from fleet, I would say we weren't really involved in fleet. Fleet's one of our 9 divisions. But yes, we were involved quite a bit with highway, with designing drainage solutions, roadway paving, roadway design. We would do a lot of work with parks and forestry, laying out right-of-ways. Water and sewer, that goes hand in hand with engineering. We're always working on large projects. So we did a lot of that. Even facilities, which is concentrating more on the buildings, there has been a component of engineering. So
then it's fair to say, as a town engineer, that set you up very nicely to be the DPW director, because you were really dealing with all those different divisions during your that period of time. Good. Yep. So moving on to the DPW itself, so we mentioned there are 9 divisions.
Yes.
So can you give us a little bit of background about how the DPW is structured and the operations? I think you mentioned the number of miles of road and coastline and things of that nature.
Yeah, so the town maintains about 375 miles of road. We actually just did a query this week on how many miles of road in Plymouth total. We came up with 659 miles total. So that includes state roads, roads in private gated communities. But we're responsible for about 375 miles of roads. We also have over 60 miles of gravel roads, which when I first came to Plymouth, I was floored by how many gravel roads were in town.
Right.
I mean, I grew up in this area, and I had no idea that we had that many gravel roads.
And you maintain the gravel, the DPW maintains those?
We do.
Wow,
Yep.
that's a lot of work. And the 9 different divisions, just to touch, what are those 9 different divisions?
All right, let's see if I can rattle them off without missing one.
I'll count.
All right, so we have water, sewer, engineering, highway, fleet, solid waste, parks and forestry. We have cemetery and crematory, and facilities maintenance.
That's 9.
Yep.
Wow. I actually, when I get involved in DPW, it's usually like water, sewer, and I think even facilities now, because facility has taken on such a major role,
Yes.
especially major conversation piece with town meeting members and such. But I overlook a lot of the others, like solid waste. I feel like I never talk about solid waste anymore. Although I do remember when I was here 5 years ago, Dennis Westgate and I, who was the assistant DPW director at the time, we worked with previous selectmen and COBRA member to develop the landfill fee structure. Not the landfill, the transfer station fee structure. But other than that, that's kind of the only dealings I think I've had in the solid waste field.
Solid waste is one of our smaller divisions. We have 4 full-time employees there, a part-time employee. We do about 3,200 transfer station permits a year, so it's not a lot given the whole scale of the town.
Sure.
But we also do municipal trash collection and also recycling collection at the schools too. So.
Not to get off topic, but since you did talk about the transfer station, which is co-located with the capped landfill, correct?
Yes.
I know that there have been some conversations, and Mark Rail, our climate resiliency plan, has talked about pursuing opportunities to maybe put solar array fields on top of those. So, not in your pathway, but it's something that the town is now considering as a potential revenue source.
That's a great idea.
So more to come on that. We'll
Yeah.
bring Mark in on that one as we get closer. So let's talk about some major DPW projects. And one of the projects I had mentioned last night to the select board was the sewer interceptor project down on Water Street.
Yeah.
And I know most recently you were interviewed by a local media outlet because of the complexities of this project. Excuse me. This project. Can you kind of describe to the folks like what this project is all about, the funding, and kind of like where we're headed with this project?
Yeah, this is a very complex project. What we have right now is we have a 30-inch reinforced concrete sewer pipeline that actually goes through the harbor. If you look down over the wall on Water Street, you'll see manhole structures at low tide. So this pipe, there's actually 2 45-degree bends, and we can't inspect the pipe. We can't get our cameras through the bends. We suspect that there's saltwater infiltration in that pipe. About 70% or up to 70% of the wastewater flow in town actually goes through that 30-inch pipe. If there were ever to be an issue with that pipe, a catastrophic failure, you would have all that wastewater flowing into the harbor. So the point of this project is to relocate that interceptor pipe under Water Street. So you'd have a straight line rather than these bends. We'd be able to access it. So
help me understand the direction of this, because I'm with you, and I think a lot of folks when they're walking on Water Street and they're by the seawall, you look down and you see those manhole structures,
Yes.
which I've seen them all the time, and I never put 2 and 2 together that was the sewer line. So you plan to replace that sewer line, put it into Water Street. And now, is this the line that's going to connect down to the pump station?
It does.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
So that all flows into the Water Street sewer pump station, which is another project we have going on. So what we're going to be putting, or we're in the process of putting in Water Street right now, is a 30-inch PVC sewer pipeline. And it's over 20 feet deep. There's a reason why Water Street is called Water Street. It's not just because it's on the water, or at least not from our perspective in DPW. We have quite a bit of groundwater. We have actually artesian effects. So you'll see that there's a big frac tank out on the site. We have well points in the ground to dewater. So because you have to dewater when you're going down that deep, or the trench would fill with water. So it's a complicated project, which is why you see so much activity there. We have sheeting to support the trench that's going down 25 feet. So it's a slow-going project. It's about 1,400 linear feet. We have 315 feet in the ground so far, so that's about 20% of the project is complete. Our goal is to try to complete the installation by June 1st. We strategically plan this for the winter months,
Right.
so as not to be, or to be the least disruptive to businesses and tourists. So our hope is to keep this project moving and be out of Water Street as soon as possible.
And how old is the existing sewer main?
So that was installed in 1964, I believe, which
So it's not terribly old, right?
it's not, and it blows my mind to think how they installed that in the harbor.
Right.
It's
And
really
why would they
fascinating.
choose to install a sewer line in the harbor? Was that an easier
It
project
must have
back
been.
then?
I don't know. I wish I was back there to, you
Right.
know, to
Why they
know.
chose that
right.
path.
Yeah. It's-
So what, when the DPW decided that this needs to be replaced, was there a reason for that? Was it just because you've had problems with that main, backups maybe, or it had reached its useful life? Or is it more trying to protect the environment?
Protecting the environment is a major component of this project, yes. Just knowing if there were to ever be a break of that pipeline, it would be catastrophic, having all that wastewater flowing right into the harbor. And the thought of how would we repair it, too. So we would probably, similar to when the force main broke, we would have to set up bypass pumping around the clock. And again, we suspect there could be some saltwater infiltration. We see our TDS levels, that's total dissolved solids. Those levels are elevated in our wastewater, and we suspect some of that is coming from water from the harbor.
Interesting.
And the other point is access. So one of the things we do in the sewer division, every 5 years, we clean and camera all 60 miles of our sewer collection system. And this is a major pipeline, again, up to 70% of the flow going through that pipeline that we can't access.
Really?
So it's concerning.
So, and this is interesting too, because this is why we have public works departments, because they're the ones paying attention to our critical infrastructure. And if it weren't for engineers like yourself, we could have catastrophic failure. We had it once.
And we have.
Right.
We have
What was
had
that?
that happen.
2015, right?
2015
December
it
of
started, yep.
2015, we had the forced sewer main. I think it had four breaks in it.
3 breaks we had.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we've already experienced it once in this town. So again, I appreciate the efforts of the DPW and trying to prevent future catastrophic problems. And just before we move on to the next project, what is the total cost of this project here?
So the select board approved $4.7 million in ARPA funding for this project.
So just so folks
Right.
are aware, ARPA funding is money that came from the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
This money helps mitigate any costs that would have been associated to the taxpayer, but I think in this situation, what would have been associated with the ratepayers on the sewer system. So again, $4.5 million is a lot of money that our ratepayers and/or taxpayers don't have to pay. So
Yep.
happy to have that ARPA fund. And the county commissioners came in yesterday to present the town with a check. So moving on to the next project, and I think that's why the county commissioner was in last night, right? To present the board with a check using ARPA dollars to fund the Water Street Pump Station flood wall, correct?
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about that project, and what was the total cost of that? Was
So
that 2.2?
The ARPA funding was $2.5 million.
Was there a total project cost that was north of the $2.5 million?
Nope, that's.
Oh, so
we're
the total
gonna come
project
in
was $2.5
just
million.
under the $2.5 million. That's what
Okay,
we're
and so what is the goal? Because I've had some people call me to criticize the flood wall, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But
Okay.
let's talk about the flood wall, the intention of it.
Yeah, so I talked about the Water Street Interceptor. Up to 70% of the wastewater flow in town goes through that. The Water Street Sewer Pump Station, that brick building you see on Water Street next to East Bay Grill, that receives, I would say, up to 95% of the wastewater flow in town. Basically, everything flows down to Water Street. It used to go right out into the harbor. It now gets pumped 4.5 miles back up to Camelot Park. The only section of town that doesn't flow through that is Long Pond Road. So the jail and Long Pond Road up to the police
that
station.
goes directly to this.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So
Wow.
the Water Street Sewer Pump Station is probably our most critical infrastructure in the sewer collection system. This building is susceptible to flooding during extreme storm events. We have had hurricanes and whatnot where we've had to sandbag around the pump station. Once again, you have all your wastewater going through that pump station. We know the storms have been getting more intense.
Sure.
This goes back to climate change, resiliency planning. So if we were to lose the operation of that pump station during an extreme storm, you would have sewer backups. Again, it would be catastrophic. So this flood barrier wall is designed to protect that sewer pump station from flooding. So it's a 5-foot-high wall, and we will have gates we can drop in at the driveway entrances. We've also designed it for future use, so we could actually build, add gates on top of that 5 feet to build it
really?
higher if necessary.
Wow.
Yep, so right now they finished pouring the wall. So what you see, the wall's finished. It actually looks pretty nice. There's a nice curve along the back of it. There is going to be a stone facade on the wall, and there's a mock wall you'll see fronting Water Street.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah, so that'll be installed in April. So it'll look, the idea.
Some trees have been saved. I know
We
that
did.
was an issue.
Yep, we planned strategically to minimize the number of trees that were cut down. We minimized the footprint of the wall because it is such an expensive project. But we're trying to make it aesthetically pleasing to mimic a classic New England stone wall.
Sure.
So
So again, another project that is really focused on critical infrastructure. But before I get to the point of one of the calls I received, I don't think people realize that before the pump station, that all the town's sewage flowed right into the harbor.
well, I kind of deceived you a little bit. That was our primary wastewater treatment plant originally. So we treated the water,
and then
the
discharged
wastewater, and discharged
Gotcha,
it.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well that makes
Yes.
sense. So that was that station there used to be the wastewater treatment plant?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
So you guys treated it and then discharged it into the harbor.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when I first started working in Plymouth, I looked at the sewer collection system layout. I said, this is crazy. All the wastewater flows here, and then we pump it 4.5 miles up the street, and then we treat it, and we pump it back down to Water Street, because the treated water still goes in the harbor, primarily. So, but then once I understood the background, it made a lot more sense.
It made sense because it was already there.
Yep, and most of it flows by, or has flown, gravity flow to Water Street.
Which is inexpensive, obviously.
Yeah.
So I had a chance to take a look at the wall, the flood wall, and there's an opening right on Water Street, which I think is where the gate is going to be, right?
Yep.
So the question that came to me was, how, if we have a gate, how is the gate, because the gate is, to a certain degree, it's impervious because it has openings, how can the gate withstand, flood elevations?
Yeah, so we will drop in their pre-made solid gates. They actually go into slots. So before a storm comes, we will set those up, and it is all watertight.
It is all watertight.
So the day-to-day gate you see isn't the gate that's going to be blocking the water.
If you are predicting a hurricane to come, you would take out this movable gate,
These panels,
and then gotcha, and then drop in the rails. Gotcha. Okay. Well, good. I can explain that next time someone makes a phone call. It's interesting because there's always a method, right, behind the decisions that we make. We all make collectively, and sometimes from the outside looking at these decisions, you don't have all the information, and then you start to make accusations or criticize those decisions, which is why we're here today, to be able to provide the facts and the information so people understand why we made the decisions that we made.
And anytime anyone is unclear, I always say, call us. We'll explain it.
Sure.
That's what we're here for. Anytime, call us. There's someone in DPW who can help you.
Well, you guys are busy, so when they don't get in touch with you, they call me.
Yeah.
And if I have the information, then I can also relay that as well. So we have about 10 minutes, and I know we've only gone through 2 projects out of number of projects, but one I wanted to jump to just because I think it's really interesting, because we've had a lot of conversations in the community around water, right? We talked mostly around West Plymouth and the booster station,
Yeah.
and we'll probably come back at a later date to talk about that project.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about this Management water main project?
Yep, the pipe upgrade project. So this is a large project, and it's going to go out to bid next week, actually. So this is about 4 miles of water main improvements focused in the Manomet pressure zone. We have 6 water pressure zones in our system. The pressure zone is kind of like a mini water distribution network. So this is focused on the Manomet pressure zone. We're targeting replacement of 1930 era cast iron water mains. What happens with these cast iron water mains over time, they get tuberculated, so they crust over with iron and manganese. So you have less flow going through them. You have
The diameter gets too
yes.
narrow.
So we're upsizing all these. Well, actually, replacing them in kind. Most of them with the in kind pipe sizes, but
Are
we're
they going to be
putting.
different pipe sizes, or
No,
one?
most of them are the same, but it's going to be ductile iron pipe. And honestly, these cast iron pipes are 90 years old. They've exceeded their useful life. So we're going to see much better system performance overall, fire flows, less pressure fluctuations. We've got 7 locations where we're replacing the water mains, 6 roads, and also through the Manomet Elementary School site. So there's going to be a lot of activity in Manomet this summer and fall. We did receive a $3.51 million EDA grant through the federal government for this
How much
project.
was it?
3.51 million.
Wow.
This project is projected to be upwards of $12 million. We'll see what the bids come in at. So we're anticipating multiple work crews on different streets in Manomet. So it'll be a busy project. We have a website we've created for the project. We'll reach out to the public once we're ready to get going. Probably have a public information session just so the residents in the area know what's coming. But that's a major project.
Yeah, so when we get closer to that, we should probably bring on the water superintendent, Pete Gordon,
Yes.
and just maybe spend 30 minutes talking about this, and maps and diagrams as
Yep.
another way to inform, because the summertime is a busy time of year, especially in the
Yes.
Manomet area, as you know, and I'm sure we'll get lots of phone calls as to what's going on. The $12 million project, or projected to be, and you have a $3.5 million grant, so off the top of my head, you got about I don't know,
It's
$8.5 million.
12 plus million. I
Yeah,
don't want to
so
get into the details. It's a
where's
lot.
the other $8.5 million coming from?
So we went to town meeting in fall of 2020, originally for $5.1 million for this project. Then we got the EDA grant, which that 3.51 comes off of that 5.1. Then with everything with COVID, pricing in the construction industry has just exploded. We looked at the cost estimates, and we went back to town meeting this past fall, 2022, and asked for the supplemental money to.
And is that being raised through the enterprise account, or?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
we'll ballpark it. The balance of $9 million is going to be raised through the ratepayer for this
Yes.
project. And so the first 2 projects, we talked a lot about having to repair the pump station, the sewer interceptor because of critical infrastructure and potential catastrophic event. What will this Manomet project do for us once it's complete? What are we gaining by replacing these old mains?
So not only are we replacing mains that need to be replaced anyway, system efficiency really improves. So we won't have to pump our water from our wells for as long or pump them as hard. The fire flows improve. So it has a net positive effect throughout the Manomet pressure zone, not just on those 7 locations where the 7 locations and 4 miles of water main pipe. It actually improves the entire network in the Manomet pressure zone.
Gotcha. And so so there's less strain on the booster stations. Is that part of it?
On the pump stations,
Pump
the well
stations.
sites
Gotcha.
themselves. Yep.
One question I have, just because I had the opportunity to work for the DPW 2 years when I was working in Worcester, and we had 3 different pressure zones, and we painted our hydrants different colors so that. Do we do that in this town?
We do that in
All right,
Plymouth.
so based upon the pressure zones, painted a different color. So that's how you could tell what pressure zone you're in based upon the color. Oh, good to know. Great, so that's another great project. And again, I know we're getting close on time here, so we got about 3 or 4 minutes left. One of the projects I wanted to talk about, and I know this isn't coming from the DPW, but it came up last night at the select board meeting where Precinct 3 is proposing to do a traffic study in the downtown area. And the reason why I'm bringing it up today is because if town meeting were to support this project idea, it's about a $165,000 article. This project will ultimately get turned over to the DPW. Can you just describe in short like what the proponents of this project are trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so this we're really excited about this study actually, and we're happy that the citizens brought this forth. I think we all have experienced traffic congestion throughout town, particularly the downtown area. So this study is an all-encompassing view from JB's Corner, Obery Street, up to Cherry Street in North Plymouth, from the waterfront over to Route 3. So we're looking at that entire area comprehensively. We're looking at speeds, we're looking at efficiency of travel. Do one-way streets make more sense? We're looking at parking, we're looking at pedestrian accommodations, crosswalks, with the ultimate goal to make everything safer. Hopefully traffic will flow better. There's quite a few public meetings worked into this proposed project because there'll be a lot of interaction with the public. This is just step one. This is a study. From that study, we anticipate capital improvements coming down the pipeline.
Right. Good. And so, so this project, I think someone had even said yesterday that this project could be like a template for other type of traffic studies throughout town. So, I know that I've talked to some of the local businesses about this, and they're very interested in this, especially the restaurants and the business that are downtown, because they're wondering how this is going to affect their business, and so they want to be a part of those conversations as well. So more to come, and we'll debate that at the town meeting floor on that one.
Yeah.
And then the last project that came up last night is not a project so much. It's been a concern that's been raised, and a number of residents came out last night that are from the Redbrook area, and there's this very complicated 4-way intersection down on Wareham Road that folks are, they want the DPW to do something. They feel like that they're not getting the service that they want from the DPW. Can you explain what our limitations are? Because we have to follow codes, and I tried to explain this last night.
Yeah.
And so just kind of, if you could explain the codes that you have to abide by when it comes to traffic rules and regulations.
So we follow the MUTCD, which is the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That's implemented through the Federal Highway Administration. In order to install a 4-way stop, MUTC has what's called warrants. So you have to meet these warrants. These are thresholds. One of them is you have to have an average of 300 vehicles traveling for an 8-hour average a day through the intersection. With pedestrians and bicycles, the average is 200 units hourly, but for an 8-hour duration. Or 5 or more crashes in the intersection relating to turning in the past 12 months. So we've studied this. We studied it back in May 25th of 2021, and we just did another traffic study January 26th, 2023. And that intersection does not meet the warrants for a 4-way stop. However, we understand the concerns of the residents. We sympathize with them. We've heard a lot of feedback of what they're experiencing at this intersection. So what we're recommending right now is to have a third-party independent investigation of that intersection, and that's called a road safety audit.
Good.
We're trying to schedule that right now through OCPC, the Old Colony Planning Council. And hopefully we'll get that started this summer, and we're going to continue to work with the residents to see if there are any short-term improvements we can do in the interim.
Well, I appreciate that. We're running out of time. I only got a few more seconds left. Sheila, thank you for coming on. More to come on DPW projects. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week on This Week in Plymouth.